Happy Wednesday, everyone. My name is Yiling Zhuang. I'm the Water Resources Regional Specialized Agent in University of Florida IFAS Extension. Welcome to the Water Wednesdays. Water Wednesdays is a webinar series about Florida's precious resource, water. Every Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, we will live stream a 30-minute talk about Florida's water and what we can do to protect it. We host our webinar series on Zoom and broadcast to Facebook Live. If you are viewing on Facebook, please be aware of scammers. This webinar series is free. Please do not click any links that are not posted by the admin. We have a theme for every month. This month is the Florida Friendly Landscaping Month. I will post a link in the chat box if you want to learn more about the 9 principles of Florida Friendly Landscaping. Today, I invited my colleague, the Florida Friendly Landscaping Agent in Orange County, Ms. Tia Savesi, to tell us how to compost for a water-wise landscape. Let's welcome Tia.
Thank you, Yiling. So great to be part of your Water Wednesdays. This is such a great fit for me as a Florida Friendly landscaping agent because Florida Friendly is all about conserving water, having a beautiful landscape, and using sustainable practices. Should I go ahead and share my screen?
Go ahead.
Okay, great. Let me just put it on slideshow mode. Slideshow. All right. Hi, everybody. So my name is Tia Salvesi. I'm the Florida Friendly Landscaping Agent for the University of Florida IFAS Extension in Orange County. And today I'm going to be talking to you about composting for a water-wise landscape. So using compost and recycling your yard waste is a great way to increase the water holding capacity in your lawn and your landscape, and adding compost just helps build the soil health in so many ways. I'll try to explain to you in detail a little soil chemistry today and how it really works so you can wrap your head around it. But these are some simple practices that you can implement at home, in your yard, in your community garden, from wherever you're joining us in Florida or all around the world. These are the same basic principles that will apply to any landscape. So the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program is by the University of Florida in cooperation with the Environmental Protection Department, and we advocate on 9 principles, which include principles to water effectively, fertilize appropriately, mulch, and number 7, you'll see recycle yard waste. And all of these working together will help you have a more environmentally friendly and sustainable landscape, where you can have a beautiful landscape with less problems. And hopefully you'll be able to grow things with a minimal addition of fertilizer and irrigation as nature intended. Today, we're going to be focusing on Florida Friendly Landscaping Principle number 7, which is recycle yard waste. So what we can do in our homes and landscapes is all the waste, the organic waste that we're producing in our home and landscape, we can recycle that to make compost. And the compost is basically organic matter. And when it decomposes, it benefits the soil and the plants. I'll go into that more, but really we're looking at increasing soil health. There was a saying before by the Rodell Institute, healthy soil equals healthy plants equals healthy people. And you could take that further to equals a healthy planet, because it makes a more closed loop, sustainable system. In short, having all this good organic matter in the soil, it will make your soil looser. It will benefit your plants, and it will increase your water holding capacity and soil fertility. So this compost is going to hold water in your soil, and that will mean you have to water less frequently. You can use natural rainfall as your primary source of irrigation, and then just irrigate supplementary as needed. And the other goal is we want less garbage going to the landfill. And garbage, I'm not sure if that's an appropriate term because the organic waste should not be considered garbage, but a lot of people just throw them in the trash and bag them up in plastic. So there's a better and higher use of these, which is to build the soil in your landscape. So here's a picture of a natural forest in Orlando, Florida. And you can see right now is our fall or winter, and the trees are shedding the leaves and there's little branches on the forest floor. All of this is going to get eaten up by the beneficial microbes, the fungi and bacteria, the little tiny microorganisms that you can't even see. And they're going to turn into organic matter, is going to break down into compost and humus, which is just a really broken down compost that will stay in the soil. And this is what makes the forest floor so dark and rich and spongy and moist, and helps to feed all the plants in the trees and have a thriving ecosystem. The beneficial microbes, the fungi and bacteria, they also help with the plant health. Like kind of like probiotics for your body, they are probiotics for our ecosystem, and they help protect the plant roots and the plant leaves from pathogens such as harmful bacteria or fungi or viruses. So we can mimic the same process in our own yards. You might have heard the term biomimicry. And so we're taking that forest floor principle, and how can we do that in our own little landscape, at our house, in our gardens, in our front lawn, in our landscape beds? So the compost will reduce your water use because it will hold that water in the soil where it's available for the plants. It will improve your soil structure. The roots will be easier to go down. There's more air spaces for them to thrive and grow. And most of all, it will decrease your overall environmental impact. So lessening the burden on, outside resources like a big truck having to come and pick up your bags of leaves, your yard waste, and also improve your own self-sufficiency and, sustainability in your yard, because now you're producing your own compost that will help your soil, add a little bit of fertility and all the benefits. So don't be scared of composting, because it happens just like the forest floor. These organic materials will naturally break down. And today I'll be sharing with you some, compost hacks and little tips that I've learned over my many years of farming and working in landscaping and ecology that will help you hasten these processes in your own yard. So let's go over the benefits of compost. The organic matter improves the soil health in many, many ways. I'm just going to touch on some of them today. But again, it increases soil water holding capacity. And that's how compost can help you achieve a more water-wise landscape. By adding a little bit of compost all over your yard, it will help to increase the soil water retention, thus minimizing the need for irrigation. So it also holds nutrients that makes them more plant available, and provides food for the beneficial microbes. Remember the probiotics for your yard, the fungi and the bacteria. So this is how it works. If you want to get a little technical, I'm very science minded. I like to know how these things work. So humus is a compost that is broken down. You can almost use them interchangeably, but not really, because it's a little bit like mature compost. But anyway, the organic particle will hold a negative charge, and that will attract positively charged ions to your soil. So you can see like the magnesium and the calcium that will be sticking to the organic molecule, and that's how it helps to hold the nutrients and make them, easier for the plant to access them. It will also help to hold the water next to them, although I don't have a picture of a water molecule here. But water molecules have polar charge, so this will help hold the water and hold the nutrients. So some more benefits: we're recycling our food scraps and our landscape waste. So to achieve zero waste and work towards sustainability, we want to recycle as much as we can of these materials as close to our house as possible, in our home, in our community garden, in our neighborhoods. And this will help divert the materials from the landfill. So composting in your yard versus having a big truck come to haul these and use the industrialized machinery. It is good to put your landscape on the curb if you're not able to recycle it at home, but they do not take food waste in Orange County here in Florida. Depending on where you live, you might have a separate receptacle for food waste, but we currently don't recycle that in my area. So first we're going to talk about compost bins. What kind of compost bin or pile do you want to have? And I'll go through some examples here. You can have an open pile. It can be made of wire mesh. You could use it out of recycled pallets, wooden box, even a large pot. A plastic pot will be fine. And there's many different bins that you can purchase. Some cities even have incentive programs. If you live in the city of Orlando or the city of Winter Park, inquire within. So here's an example of an open pile. This is my pile that I have in my backyard, and it's just an open pile. I didn't see a need to purchase anything or use brand new lumber to create a pile, and this works just fine. I don't have problems with animals, but depending on where you are, maybe your HOA requires it to be in a purchased bin or something different. So just pick which type suits you. Here's a bin made from pallets, and this is actually a 3-bin system, but you can see the organic waste is being piled into the center pallet, and then the other 2 sides are left sitting for a while. So these are free and readily available. Most of them are not pressure treated, so you can use them pretty safely. If you do find one that has some special marking on it, then you could Google that and see if it has been treated with something. But usually pallets are cheap and easy, and they don't use pressure treated wood. So here's a 3-bin system that we have at our demonstration garden at our Orange County Extension Center. And so this is similar to the pallet, where we have the 3 bins, and we can have 1 bin for ready to use compost, 1 bin that we're actively feeding, and another bin that is just sitting and resting and curing. It takes about 3 to 6 months in Florida for our compost to cure here, with a little turning here and there. So purchase bins is another great option, especially if your neighbors really care what your compost looks like, or if you have a lot of raccoons or other animals trying to dig into your compost. This one here has a locking lid, so you can turn it and lock it and keep all the vermin out. And like I said, check with your local municipality, because some of them do offer free composting bins. Here in Central Florida, I know the city of Orlando does, and the city of Winter Park does. In Seminole County is going to be raffling some off through their extension office, I think next month in February, if you're a Seminole County resident. Another way to compost is worm composting. And so you don't have to choose one or the other. You can have many different styles of composting. In fact, at my house, I do worm composting and regular composting. So worms can eat the organic matter very quickly, and it will be in a nice small space. So if you live in a condo or apartment, or just have a little back patio to set your bin, some people even set them under their kitchen sinks to eat their organic food waste. You do want to choose the right type of worm for composting, like a red wiggler worm, a type of composting worm. It will depend on your area, what species are available. And you can usually purchase these from worm farms. Um, you don't want to use earthworms that you find in the ground outside, because those type burrow underground, where the composting worms more live on the surface of the earth in the leaf litter. So there's a whole class I do on worm composting. If you want to know about that, you can contact me. And here's something for if you're completely urban composting and you don't have any kind of patio or nothing, you can buy this electric composter that you just put in your kitchen or your office. This picture is from the Orange County administration building, where the government officials are composting their food waste in the building, like from their lunchtime snacks. So this is electric. It does need to be plugged in, and it has some grinding mechanisms that will grind and compost your food waste very quickly. So next we're going to talk about how to make a compost pile. And so I'm going to keep this pretty simple. You could go into a lot more detail, but for the purposes of today's workshop, I'm going to keep it simple. So the bottom layer you can see on this picture is the dried leaves, the pine needles, the brown stuff. I also use palm fronds. I'll use dried banana leaves, grass clippings, anything else that are brown. You want that to be a nice, thick, fluffy layer, because that will help with the aeration. And if you have anything large, like a palm frond stem or petiole, then that's a good place to put it on the bottom, because the weight of the whole pile will help it become moist and decompose faster. So the next layer is the green, the vegetable scraps, the green grass clippings, any kind of high nitrogen materials will go in the green layer. And then you want to add a little bit of water and soil. So we talked about the beneficial microbes, the fungi and bacteria. Those are often coming in with your soil. If you scrape up a little garden soil, or you can even get a little leaves from the forest to act as an inoculant to add those beneficial microbes to your compost pile. It is good to have your pile just on the soil. You don't want to put it on a concrete slab or anything. And that way the microbes can naturally come in from the surrounding soil, and you don't have to worry about inoculating the pile. So then you continue the layers of the brown and the green, add a little soil and water. And just a sprinkle of soil is good enough. But if you have some old potting mix or something, you can add that in there too. So here's a picture of some food scraps. If you're cooking, you might want to use a Tupperware container or something to keep your food scraps in there. I keep mine in the freezer to reduce the bad smell. Some people use those countertop ones with the carbon filter. However your method is fine. And then usually once a week, I'll take mine out and I'll bury it into the compost pile. One of the most important things is that whenever you add the fresh food scraps, always cover it with a nice layer of leaves or grass clippings or something. That way it does not smell when you add it to the pile. If you just add leaves or grass clippings alone, there's no need to cover that up because it won't have a bad smell. But food scraps, always cover the food scraps. So if you just have a pile that you're, kind of building as you go, and you can just dig a little hole, add your food scraps, and then cover it back up, mix it in. So another thing you want to compost is your leaves. So you can use the leaves, like rake them into your landscape or garden beds. But if you have too much to do that, you can bag them or put them in large pots and save them for later. In Florida, we usually have our winter season, like now we have a lot of leaves, But come spring and summer, there won't be many leaves left because they are breaking down in the environment, and you would have wished you save a couple bags of leaves, to cover your food scraps and stuff in the compost pile. If you do have a couple bags that you save, just put the bag, on the rear end of your compost pile, and then you can scoop some leaves out as you needed. And then in the meantime, they'll be breaking down in the bag as well. So a little bit more on composting materials. So we're talking about greens and browns, and you want to have a good mix of both of them. That way your compost decomposes and it has plenty of air, but it's not too like thick and liquidy and smelly. So that's how you balance the green and browns. So there's some different ratios out there, 30 parts of carbon to 1 part nitrogen, or like 2 bags of leaves per 1 bag of green grass clippings. But don't worry too much about the ratios. What we just want is a balance between greens and browns. So some of the brown material that you might have around your landscape may include leaves, straw, paper, like shredded paper. I use my pizza boxes as compost materials too, or I feed them to my worms because in our area, they don't recycle, soiled cardboard. So that's another thing you can be composting that would otherwise be thrown in the trash. Also animal bedding, like rabbits or cows or horses mixed with manure. And those can have a varying, carbon to nitrogen ratio. As for the greens, these are high nitrogen materials, which can include vegetable scraps, coffee grounds, even though they're brown, grass clippings, and then also manure from cow, horse, poultry, chicken manure is especially hot. You can see the low carbon to nitrogen ratio of 10 to 1. With the litter, there's a little bit more carbon. And you can also get what we call zoo doo from your local zoo, depending on your area. Like elephant or other herbaceous animals, you can use their manure in composting. However, you want to stay away from carnivorous animals because they have their feces may contain pathogens that are harmful to humans. So again, the browns, the carbon, they decay very slowly. They're coarse and they help to keep the pile aerated. They tend to accumulate now in the fall, in the winter, and they can tie up nitrogen in the soil if not fully composted. So it's best to compost the materials and then add the finished compost to your garden instead of incorporating them into the soil. Top dressing, putting leaves on top of the soil as mulch, that's fine. And that won't tie up too much nitrogen. And again, you may need to stockpile some of these, put a bag of leaves behind your compost pile until you can mix them with some more of your fresh food scraps. And then a review of the greens, these decay rapidly. They have high nitrogen supply. They have poor aeration, so that's why they need to be mixed with some browns. And if you just try to compost all your food scraps with no leaves or grass clippings or anything, then they might have a foul odor. Greens are more prevalent like in the spring and the summer. Think about the spring green burst. And they supply the nitrogen for composting. So greens can speed up the composting with the nitrogen. If you want faster composting, add a little bit more nitrogen. And again, mix them with the browns for best result. All right, so I hope you got an understanding on how to build the pile, and compost just happens, so don't worry about it too much, but you do want to try to mix together, layers of green, brown, a little water and soil to have a nice mixture of everything in your compost pile. And the more materials that you add to it, the more nutrients and beneficial things that will provide back to your soil and your landscape. Before we end this section, I just want to make you aware that some compost materials you have to use caution, or we recommend not to compost. So some people ask about citrus. If you are a citrus grower and have a whole truckload of citrus, that might be a little bit too much to add to your compost pile. They can be added, but you might want to chop them up smaller and make sure they're thoroughly mixed with other materials so they can break down and they don't make your pile too acidic. Wood ash, you also have to use with caution. You can use a little bit of wood ash, from your campfires and stuff, but they will make your soil pH go up. So just use a little bit at a time. If you have extra, just store it in a bucket and just do a couple, cups per month on your compost pile. Eggshells, you have to be cautious of because they may contain salmonella. So don't throw some fresh eggshells on your lettuce leaves. And then if it rains, and then eat your raw lettuce leaf. It's best to wash them out or dry them out, crush them up and put them in your compost pile. They will add calcium to your compost and to your soil, and they do biodegrade eventually, but very slowly. You also have to be careful with meat scraps, fish, and dairy because of the potential for harmful pathogens. Again, don't put like raw meat or fish or dairy next to your fresh lettuce leaves and then eat them. These have to be well composted. Some people bury them or use a hot composting where the temperature can reach up to like 150 degrees Fahrenheit for a duration of about 3 days or 72 hours to make sure you kill any harmful pathogens. Same things with fats and oils, depending on where they came from. They are kind of hard to compost, slow to compost, but you can compost them and they will eventually turn into compost. But some things you don't want to compost at all is diseased plants, especially viruses, because viruses are extremely hard to kill even at high temperatures for a duration of time. Noxious weeds, like if you have a nutgrass, or I have this philodendron vine in my yard, it just is very hard to kill. So you might just want to throw that in the yard waste and let the industrial composting site at your county, take care of that. Also recently treated, chemically treated plants, whether you're doing fungicide or something that persists, you don't want to compost those for at least a month or two. And also pet manures like dog and cat. You don't want to compost those because of the risk of the pathogens. Now some tips for faster composting. So if you want to speed up the process, what you can do is you can cut up the materials into smaller pieces. Here I chopped my watermelon up into extra small pieces to feed my worms. Also in the regular compost pile, you can cut your ginger pieces or whatever, banana leaves up pretty small, or palm fronds. That way they biodegrade quicker. Adding air by turning frequently, that will help with biodegradation, speeding it up. Making the pile bigger. Having a bigger pile, it will be more moisture, the temperature will increase. You'll just have more organic matter that can break down. The very exterior layer is kind of like the coat, and the sun beating on it, the microbes won't be able to survive in those areas. So what's inside the pile is really what's cooking. Add high nitrogen materials too, like some food scraps or green grass clippings. So another tip is that you can grow your own compost materials. I use my palm fronds, my banana leaves, anything that's kind of herbaceous and fleshy, like gingers, cannas, clumping grasses. I give them a little haircut, like the native cordgrass or vetiver grasses. Those are great. It's like a little hay factory. You can just cut them and add them to the compost pile. So next I'm going to talk about some composting shortcuts. So when we talk about composting, not everything has to be gathered up from your yard and walked over to the compost pile. You can use some composting in place strategies to help reduce your, labor input and just add the organic matter to your yard where it's needed. So when you do strategies like composting your grass clippings or tree leaves or other plant residues in place, then you're really directly applying the organic matter to your lawn and your landscape. So this is a little advanced, and I hope you guys can follow along with me, but I'll go through each one of them on their own. So grass cycling, this is a creative term that Sarasota County Extension wrote an article about, and they use the slogan mow and go. So you want to use a mulching mower, or some of them have different settings for bagging or mulching. So this lawnmower I have here on the mulching setting, and so the back flap is closed and the side flap is closed, and the mowing blade just cuts up the grass into very fine pieces where it just falls back down into the grass. So the grass clippings are broken down, by the decomposition process, the microbes, and they will add organic matter to your lawn. And by doing this, then you have all that extra organic matter. It can equal, addition of compost. So in lieu of going and adding compost, you can just be mulching your grass clippings to add the organic matter to your lawn, and then that will help with the soil health and the retaining water and making your grass healthier. So next we'll talk about tree cycling, and the slogan here is leaf it be. Leaf it be, let it be, let the leaves be. You can rake them into landscape beds and use them as a mulch. You can even mow them, just leave them on your lawn and chop them up with your mulching setting on your mower, and then they'll help to add organic matter to your grass. And these leaves are broken down by the microbes, and they can add organic matter to your landscape. So they make a nice mulch. It will protect from weeds, and then as they slowly decompose over time, they will have the same benefits like the grass cycling, adding organic matter, increasing your water retaining capabilities of your soil, and adding small amounts of nutrients. So the next strategy is chop and drop. And this is a strategy I learned from permaculture with mainly bananas, but it's another composting in place strategy. So when you're, trimming back your clumping grasses, instead of hauling away all those grass trimmings, you can just lay them around the plants as a mulch. I do the same for bananas. So when I remove some banana leaves, I just chop and drop them and, just put them around as a mulch over the bananas. And so the mulch will eventually, biodegrade and turn into compost and be feeding the soil, increasing the water in the soil and the nutrients. So this is also good with gingers and cannas and anything that kind of has a soft, fleshy stem. They do it a lot with nitrogen fixing plants too, like pigeon pea, or if you have a perennial peanut lawn, when you mow that, you're just adding that nitrogen back into your lawn. Great strategy. So wrapping up here, when using compost, there's many different ways to use it. If you're not composting in place and you have your compost pile, you can harvest the compost when it's finished in about 3 to 6 months and use it as a soil amendment. So add the organic matter, the compost, into your landscape beds, into your vegetable beds. If you're growing vegetables like this kale here, they love lots of compost, and it will help keep the garden bed moist and provide some fertility. Although it really has little value as a fertilizer. If you ever buy a bag of compost and it has a NPK on it. Like the nitrogen will usually be like a 0 or a 0.5 or maybe 1 or 2 at the most. But it's kind of a acts to as a fertilizer in different ways. So I don't like calling it a fertilizer, but those properties that the organic matter applies to the soil, it just helps the soil out in so many ways to help the nutrients get to the plants, and the microbes are breaking it down and helping the plants. It's one of those things that's hard to quantify. But if you're a longtime organic gardener or have been using these strategies and adding compost regularly, you'll see your sandy, poor soil turn into beautiful, rich soil that's full of life. You may see a lot of earthworms because they love to eat the organic matter too. You can use the compost, as a top dressing, like as a mulch, or apply it to the lawn, just a little sprinkling, maybe 1/4 to 1/2 an inch of compost so that it falls down inside of the lawn. And then you can kind of water it in or rake it in. That way it settles on top of the soil. And of course, using it for any type of food growing operations around your fruit trees, in your vegetable gardens, mixing it in with your seed flats or into your grow boxes. So there's so many ways to use compost. You can even add a little bit of fertilizer to your compost mix if you want to give something a little extra boost, like if you're growing tomatoes, which like a lot of fertility, add some extra fertilizer, mix it into your compost, and then you'll be feeding your plant um, a very healthy diet. So that concludes my presentation today. Thank you so much for having me on this Water Wednesday. I hope you've learned some great strategies to increase the organic matter in your lawn, in your landscape, in your gardens, which will help to reduce your watering need by supplemental irrigation. This compost will help to retain all the rainfall that we get and make healthy, delicious soil for your plants. Are going to love it. Your plants will look healthier. You'll have probiotics growing all over your yard with the beneficial fungi and bacteria. And you can contact me. My phone number and my email is listed here, tsilvesi@ufl.edu. And be sure to check out my Florida Friendly Landscaping Facebook page, which is Garden Florida. So thank you for having me, and I'll take any questions now.
Thank you, Tia, for such an informative talk. Before we get these questions from our Zoom and Facebook, I did collect a few questions. I did some homework. I was searching composting and find some like social media platforms and introducing several like tips how you can compost easily. So I think we're going to do it around called myth or truth. So you tell us if it's helpful or not. Some you already touched. So when it's eggshells, like you said, eggshells have bacteria. One thing I read online, actually not online, on one social media account, they say that that account said you can cook your eggshells. In that way, it will not only kill the bacteria, but also faster the process of composting. Is that true or it's a myth?
That is true, Yiling, because eggshells may contain some salmonella. And so you can cook them. When we talk about sustainability, it's like, well, if you're going to rinse them and bake them in the oven and grind them up in your coffee grinder and then rinse out your coffee grind, is it worth all that trouble, that water, that electricity just to compost an eggshell? So, if you do have a barbecue and you're done cooking everything and you want to toss your eggshells on there, that's great. I wouldn't expend a whole lot of extra energy personally to do that, but it would be safer to rinse the eggshells with water. One, to toast them, like either in the oven or a barbecue, or even let them sit out in the sun. And they will break down faster if you grind them. So you are correct. That is true.
Great. Thank you. Actually, I have a list here, not that long. So another I saw, it's you mentioned banana peels. I saw a lot of videos now. They recommend homeowners just put banana peels in a mason jar of water and just soak it in water. Then you can use that banana peel water as a fertilizer, liquid fertilizer. I but I'm not sure. It's like just like I said, is that truth or it's a myth?
Uh, yeah, there is some truth to that, but you have to be cautious of anaerobic bacteria. So you can make compost tea out of basically any type of organic matter. Some people make it from cured compost, and that's what we recommend. But you can make it from raw materials too, like comfrey leaves or banana leaves or banana peels. And the
Mhm.
water will extract the nutrients out of there. What you need to be cautious for is creating a habitat for anaerobic bacteria, so bacteria that don't need air, because some of those can be harmful. So if you go ahead and dump that, water that might contain anaerobic bacteria onto your lettuce, and then you eat the leaf and you ingest some of that harmful bacteria, that might not be good. So that's not really something we recommend. What we recommend is to make what we call compost tea. And you can do this with regular compost or worm compost. And the process is to take, a cup or two of finished compost, that looks like you can't tell what's in it, and then put that into a bucket of water and then aerate it either with like a air stone, like powered like for aquarium, or if you don't have an air stone, you can stir it a couple times a day, and that will be enough to keep the aerobic process going to provide air to the compost tea. So you can do that 24 hours and then use the tea the next day. You don't want to store it for too long. You just want to aerate it by the air stone or by stirring it for 24 hours and then dump it out the next day. That's the process that we recommend to make compost tea.
That's good to know. Great. And the last practice I've seen, it's you introduce several types of containers. I saw one video said that you don't even need containers. So basically, you can just go to your yard, dig a small hole, and you put all the composting material there and cover it, leave it be. So after a certain time, I forgot the time period, you will have your compost material. So, and that is a truth or myth?
Yeah, I didn't talk about that, but you can bury your compost as another option. The thing is, with burying the compost is you're covering it up with soil, and so there's going to be less air. It's not going to heat up as much, and get all the microbes super active in it, like a aerated, on top of the ground compost pile would be. But that is a perfectly fine strategy. Some people have to hide their compost because their neighbors will complain, and that's the only strategy they can do. Or maybe if your dog wants to, eat it all the time, digging it and then covering it and, putting a pot or something on top. That way nobody ever knows you composted there. Also, if you're going to bury your compost, you might not want to dig it up later. You might just want to leave it in the ground and plant something on top of it later, instead of having to dig it up and sift it from the soil and stuff like that.
Awesome. Great. So I think we have enough time for our attendees to type their questions in. So now let's look at the questions. We'll start from the Zoom platform first, because we know there are about 10 seconds delay between Zoom and Facebook. So the first question, do you recommend some kind of shredder for leaves?
Leaf shredder, I like to run them over with a lawnmower because I have a lawnmower. It just depends how rich you are. If you can afford to buy a bona fide leaf shredder, they have those leaf vacuums. If you have a lot of leaf, you could buy a leaf vacuum that shreds it up and puts it in a bag for you, and then add that to your compost or sprinkle that around your landscape beds. But they will break down faster if you shred them, but it's not necessarily, you can help them break down faster by also keeping the moisture high, like covering them with something to retain the moisture in them too.
Mhm. Good. Um, where can we get worms in Orange or Seminole County?
In Seminole County, I think the closest place to you is a worm farm called Our Vital Earth, VITAL, Vital Earth, and they're in Apopka, Florida, and they can ship the worms in a little cardboard box to you overnight. So if you have your worm bin and you're ready to go, you can, buy some worms from them. There's also Revival Gardening, and you can just look online for, other worm farms. I can't recommend one in specific, but I know that Our Vital Earth is here in Central Florida, and they sell worm bins and stuff too. Most of them do.
Great. It will be interesting. Search where can I buy worms?
Yeah. All right. You can get a handful from a friend, and you can start your own colony from them.
Sounds great. Then how about lemongrass? Can we use them?
You can use lemongrass for composting. Yeah. Although I like to make tea out of it first and then compost it. But it is a good grass. It grows very well here in Central Florida, and it's something we recommend for the Florida-friendly edible landscape.
Mhm. Then do you recommend should I add Epsom salt into my composting piles?
You can add a little bit of Epsom salt. It will have some magnesium, but I would just add a little bit. It won't really speed it up or too much, but it will just add some extra nutrients that your plants might like later. If anything, I would maybe add the Epsom salt. If you're growing the tomatoes or whatever, mix it into some compost and mix it into the soil and apply it more directly to the plant.
Mhm. Good. How about winter months? How can we speed up decomposition in winter months?
Well, it depends, what kind of winter you're. If it's a Florida winter, our decomposition is still pretty active. But if you're in a more northern climate where it's very cold, you can protect the compost pile with extra layers, like throw a couple bags of leaves on top of it or add more materials to keep it covered and just turn it more frequently. That will help and make sure it's evenly moist, like there's no dry spots in it. That will help it decompose faster.
Great. Um, there's one more question on the Zoom platform is do you have an upcoming warm composting class scheduled?
I don't have one scheduled at this point, but I will be doing one very soon. But I do have a recording of a worm composting webinar on my website.
All right, so here's the web page. You can go to that web page. I believe whenever there's a new event, Tia will post the event on the Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm at the Facebook platforms.
Great. Okay.
So
Facebook. What kind
let's
of questions do the Facebook followers have, Yiling?
so can you compost tea bags?
Tea bags. Most of them are made from paper and biodegradable. Some of them are made from some kind of like plasticky, mesh material, which is not biodegradable. And then they might have a little metal staple that is not biodegradable, but for my compost, I usually put them in the biodegradable category. And if I find out that they didn't biodegrade later, then I'll cut them open, dump out the tea leaves, and throw the bag away.
Yeah, some bags I noticed it can take a really long time to decompose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and some questions actually are centered around the eggshells. I think I opened a wormhole.
Yeah.
So I mentioned the cooking eggshells. So first, it's will cooking eggshells break down nutrients, or to be more specific, cooking eggshells denature the calcium in the eggshells?
I'm not that much of an eggshell expert, but cooking and grinding them will make them break down faster. Other people soak them in vinegar, which will help kind of denature and make them more, the calcium more like soluble form. But the microbes can also help with those processes too. So, with something like eggshells, I leave it up to people's personal preferences, if they're even comfortable composting them in the first place, and then how far they want to go with the rinsing and cooking and grinding and soaking them in vinegar, to make them break down faster.
I'm checking the Facebook. I think that basically concludes all the questions. That's great. Before I let everyone go, I post a link. It's for our evaluation. So if you like our Facebook, if you like our Water Wednesday series, we appreciate you to take the survey, tell us what you have learned and how we can improve that. And if you are on Facebook, please give us a thumb up and recommend this series to your friends. So we always want to reach more people and to know what you want to learn. And with that, I thank Tia for your informative talk and answering all the questions. This is wonderful. And I have seen several compliments on our Facebook, and that's all mentioned that you did a great job. It's a fantastic presentation. So thank you again, and thank you all for your time, and hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday afternoon, and see you next week. Bye now.
Yinlin, who is your speaker for next week?
Oh, that's a good question. Thank you for reminding me that. Like I said, this month is the Florida Friendly Landscaping Month. If you missed last Wednesday we mentioned the mulch. So like what is mulch, how you can use mulch wisely. And this week, Tia mentioned on composting. And the next week, we'll do a Florida-friendly landscape design. It will be very interactive. We'll keep it interactive. So I will post the link, the registry link, if you are interested, and be prepared to bring your questions and interact with our speaker. She's the Florida-friendly landscaping agent in Seminole County, Miss Tina McIntyre. So we look forward to see you in our next Water Wednesday landscape design. And thank you, Tia, for reminding me that. And with that, I hope you all enjoy your Wednesday afternoon. Bye now.
Bye-bye.